Good evening and welcome to another edition of the Wright Experience. I'm Dr. William T. Wright Jr., the founder and host of this show. We are pleased to be back with another live edition of the show. And we are past the century mark in terms of the shows that we've been able to present to you, and past 2 years and working towards very quickly. In fact, February of 2024 will be our third anniversary of bringing you this content that we're bringing you for your viewing pleasure. Tonight, we have a special guest. This guest is a fraternity brother of mine. We actually pledged at the same university and in the same chapter. He escaped my leadership, I'll put it that way, because he pledged after I did. But certainly, I've been following his amazing career. He has served as an educational leader in the states of North Carolina and Virginia. Very proud of the accomplishments that he has accomplished over the years and his service to children and those that serve children every day. My guest tonight is Dr. Nicholas J. King. Dr. Nicholas King has worked in the states of Virginia and North Carolina as a school and district level leader, as well as an adjunct instructor at North Carolina Central University for 24 of his 27 years in the profession. During that time, he has cultivated his passion for education and worked tirelessly to create significant academic achievement for students. Currently, Dr. King serves as the Chief Academic Officer for Johnston County Public Schools, where he leads the Department of Curriculum and Instruction and Accountability, which includes the areas of elementary and secondary education, research, accountability, and assessment, beginning teacher support, career and technical education, career and college promise, fine arts, academically and intellectually gifted, instructional technology, professional learning, school improvement and support, special education, special programs, and student support services. So let's say that he oversees an abundance of programs in his district, to say the least. Prior to his appointment, Dr. King held senior district level executive administrative positions, including being the director of student services for the Albemarle County Schools in Charlottesville, Virginia, and chief academic officer in Northampton County Schools in Jackson, North Carolina. Additionally, Dr. King was a principal of 3 schools: Stone Robinson Elementary School in Charlottesville, Virginia, as well as Josephine Dobbs Clement Early College High School and Glenn Elementary School, both of which are in Durham, North Carolina. As a building level principal, he implemented programs and structures aimed at increasing the quality of classroom instruction, including but not limited to understanding the impact of trauma on student behavior and learning. During Dr. King's tenure at Josephine Dobbs Clement Early College High School, he was awarded the Bethune-Carver Dewey Educational Partnership Award by the Southeastern Consortium for Minorities in Engineering. The school was also identified as one of the nation's 25 promising education programs by the International Center for Leadership in Education. Early in his career, Dr. King taught history in Charlotte and Durham, North Carolina at Independence High School, Durham High School, and Riverside High School, all in Charlotte and Durham, North Carolina. He holds his Bachelor of Arts degree in History and Secondary Education and a Master of Arts degree in Educational Administration and Supervision from North Carolina Central University. And also Dr. King earned a Doctor of Philosophy degree from the University of Virginia in 1999 in educational leadership. Dr. King is a native of Mount Olive, North Carolina, and he and his wife, Dr. Kendra Core King, an educator as well, are the proud parents of a rising college sophomore, Miles, and rising freshman Autumn Grace at North Carolina Central University. Needless to say, he's an Eagle through and through. And at this time, I'd like to welcome to the Wright Experience my fraternity brother who escaped my wrath. My fraternity brother, Dr. Nicholas King. Welcome to the Wright Experience, Brother King.
Thank you so much, man. So excited to have this opportunity. Been watching these, and I don't know what I'm more excited about, being here tonight or having escaped your wrath all those years ago.
Yeah, that's just a little inside humor there. I was as mild and meek as anybody would ever want to meet.
I know you were. I've heard the stories.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Brother Dr. King, it's a pleasure to have you aboard the Wright Experience, and I am certainly want to take this opportunity before we get into the questioning to say I've been following your career, and you've done some amazing work. Both in the states of North Carolina and Virginia, and certainly hats off to you for being involved in educational leadership, teaching first, and then of course getting into the profession as an educational leader, and doing some amazing work to benefit children and those that serve children every day. And so we have options for sure, and so for you to dedicate your life to bettering the lives of young folks, you're to be commended for doing so. And thank you for that service.
Well, thank you so much, brother. And likewise, thank you for doing the same thing.
Absolutely. So, Dr. King, talk to us a little bit about your current work in the current role you have. You've had an amazing career, and we'll get into that shortly. But talk to us about the work that you're doing currently.
Yeah. So currently, I serve as the Chief Academic Officer in Johnston County Public Schools. Actually, preparing to transition out of that role and into a different role, actually here in about a week and a half.
Okay.
But my current role, I oversee really the entire instructional side of the school district in Johnston County. Johnston County is a rural school district. We serve about 36,500 students in Eastern North Carolina. And I supervise the Curriculum and Instruction and Accountability Department. And that department really encapsulates pretty much everything that has to do with teaching and learning for Johnston County Public Schools. Everything from, elementary, middle, and high school education to special education, the CTE. I supervise a team of about, all total about 200 folks, both folks who work in my building every day and folks who work under my direction, but in more itinerant roles every day. And basically our work is to facilitate teaching and learning across the district. Been here now about 2.5, almost 3 years. And we've had, great success, and, really tried to focus on, building a really strong and sound instructional program here for the students and families in Johnston County.
So talk to us about, so it sounds like you came into the role probably in the midst of the pandemic, I would say it that way, and then now post-pandemic. Talk to us about some of the, maybe some of the bigger challenges that we are facing with post-pandemic learning.
Well, I think the two biggest, the biggest challenges that I would speak to would be, really trying to understand and get a grasp of, how the pandemic really impacted students in terms of both learning and really from a social perspective. I'm not sure that we spend enough time really thinking about how dramatic the pandemic was for kids from the social context. I think as you look around, the world, and you see some of the conversations that are going around about, the behavior of kids, both in school, the behavior of people, outside of school, one of the things that's really real about what happened during that time is that, kids certainly lost the opportunity to be really socialized in the way that folks traditionally are in public schools around, America. And so I think that's impacting students even to this day. It is really difficult to, beyond the academic side, but to really have help kids develop the kind of social interactive skills that are so critical for them when they were doing really what we're doing right now, sitting in front of a computer screen. They lost a lot from that, that personal development piece. Obviously the other part of that is understanding how we help kids make up for what they lost from an instructional perspective. One of the things that I tell people is that we think about school, and we think about it really from just the academic, side. And people, kind of lose sight of how critical the physical interaction is in school. And having been a teacher and worked in schools all these years, those day-to-day interactions that you have with kids, being in their proximal space, it's really incredibly critical to their development. And when you think about the fact that so many kids miss that at such critical times in their development, it really put those kids at an incredible disadvantage. And so they're having to make up lots of deficits, again, both academic and social, emotional. And then the other piece of it is, just from a community perspective, another thing I think that we haven't really done enough talking about is just how devastating the pandemic was to communities. My wife was talking to an acquaintance of hers the other day, and she talked about how this person lost her husband, her father, and her sister during the pandemic. Well, you think about that family, and over the course of 3 years to lose that many people, that critical to folks' lives. So for some kids out there, that was an aunt and a grandfather, and that happened all over the country. And so, there was a lot for kids to reckon with and deal with, and they had to do that, in many instances without, the support of school and school counselors and in ways that kids, traditionally have been able to. As you think about your career, you think about the number of times that a kid came to school having had some sort of loss in their family,
Right.
and you deployed, all of the folks from the, kind of the affective side of the school district to provide support. And think about how many kids endured that kind of loss and really did not have the opportunity to have their school communities wrap themselves around them over that period of time. It really is, a really devastating thing to think about, for kids, and especially for the youngest kids, who just had no, none of the kind of preparation that many of us had, to kind of weather the storms that the pandemic created for them from an affective perspective.
So, keeping in mind that the whole social context that you talked about, as well as the academic, I choose not to use the word learning loss, but the academic recovery, if you will,
Sure.
or instructional recovery that we are undertaking. So, moving forward,
Yeah.
what do we need to do as communities first, and then as educators, to ensure that these young folks get what they need? What are some ideas that you have about how we fix ourselves, if you will, moving forward?
Well, for me, Dr. Wright, the most critical thing is maximizing the opportunity that we have with kids, right?
Okay.
In terms of learning time, what we're able to do with kids from an instructional perspective. I think one of the most critical things that we can do as schools is to identify effective instructional structures and strategies, and insist on the use of those instructional structures and strategies with kids, because we really don't have, time to waste. We've never had time to waste, but it's more acute now than it's ever been.
Certainly not now, right?
Yeah, and if you think about it, our business is one of the only businesses where folks are often allowed to use structures, tactics, approaches that aren't proven effective, and sometimes even that have been proven ineffective. I was talking to someone the other day, and I said, imagine you went to your doctor and you had to have surgery, and that doctor said to you, well, I've been a surgeon for 30 years, and things have changed dramatically over those 30 years, but the surgical procedures that I learned 20 years ago, I really liked them. And despite the fact that medical science has improved over 20 years, when I do your surgery, I'm going to use the strategies that I learned 20 years ago because I like them and they work best for me. Yeah. Now you look at that doctor sideways as you walked out the door, right? And exactly. and went and found another doctor, right? But if you think about it, in public education, we allow that to happen every day, right? We allow folks to work with kids and use tactics and strategies that we know don't work, right? Or that we know are less effective than others, when we also know structures and strategies that do work. And so, from my perspective, one of the things that we really have to do is really isolate what we do with kids and insist that folks use those things that we can prove are effective with kids. And for leaders like ourselves, that is, that requires a great deal of, what I like to call, instructional courage, right? Yeah. I was in a meeting with some assistant principals in my district the other day, and I talked about this very thing. And I said to them, when you walk into a classroom and you see a teacher or a person working with kids, using a practice that's not appropriate or not effective, and you turn around and walk out of that classroom without addressing what you just saw, you've just, provided approval for that practice to continue, right? And so what you have to do is when you walk in and confront that scenario, you have to be courageous enough to say, hey, let's have a conversation about what I just saw. It wasn't what I should have seen. And I need you to help me understand why that was going on, as opposed to, what we've identified as effective for these kids. And so to me, that's really the most critical thing we can do. We can't, despite our best efforts, we can't give them the time back. We can't give them the experiences back. The most important thing we can do is make sure that we cherish and make the absolute most of the time that we have with them going forward.
So what I hear you really saying too is, and we use this quite frequently when we're talking about social emotional behavior or tendencies, if you will. When you see something, say something. So sure, you're saying, you're challenging us. What I hear is, as educational leaders, is when we see slackness, if you will, when it comes to instructional practices, when we see that, we got to say something. That's what I hear you saying. Is that correct?
That's exactly what I hear. What you hear me say. Right. And frankly, the opposite of that too. When you see folks doing the right thing,
say something about that as well.
Say something about that, and point to that and make it clear to folks that that's what we want to see.
That's what we want to see, right?
Yeah, and so accentuate the
just
positive.
tonight, in fact, I was interviewed. I think the TV broadcast probably coming on this evening. We've got some gains in my current district, and it's not catastrophic. We're certainly not where we need to be, but we got gains.
Absolutely.
And so that's what you're talking about. When you have those, you gotta celebrate those successes, and then challenge people, of course, to continue to get better. And
yes,
and you do that through observing, which is what you're talking about, and then having those higher expectations. Beautiful, beautiful. So, Dr. King, if I gave you the opportunity, you've been doing this for a while, come up through the ranks. I see the degree from University of Virginia in 1999. I started in education late in 1998. So I know you've been doing this for a while.
Yeah.
At this point, though, if you're talking to a new administrator, brand new, just started to work, got a career to go, 10, 12, 15 years to go, what are some of the things that you've learned that you would love for them to know? Talk to us about that.
Well, the biggest thing I would tell them is, get your focus on the instructional side of the house, right?
Okay, why is that? Talk to us about that. That's beautiful. Tell me why that is.
Because that's at the end of the day, that's what makes or break, the whole kit and caboodle, right?
Okay.
It's where the rubber meets the road, right? I'll say this, and I'm a firm believer, there are lots of pieces that move around and that operate within a school. All of them have, a level of importance in order to for us to be successful. But at the end of the day, right, what produces those increases that you all are experiencing and that we are experiencing is the level, the quality of the instruction that's provided in that classroom, right?
There you go.
Everything else is secondary. Now, a lot of people don't like to say that and don't like to hear that these days because they don't want us to, kind of separate things out in that way. But I'm a firm believer in that. What's going on in the classroom is the most important thing that's happening. As a principal, what I think you'll find is, as a new principal, the more attention that you can focus on what teachers are doing in classrooms, understanding what they're doing, supporting what they're doing, helping them improve what they're doing, that is what's going to get you to the place that you want to be. Let me tell you, if you go to work tomorrow and for the next 75 days, and you focus on improving the quality of the bus ride that kids have to school, right? At the end of the year, the kids might have a better bus ride, but that bus ride being better won't necessarily improve outcomes, right? If you focus on, the cleanliness of the school, that's important. It's good. If you focus on that for 75 days, the school will be cleaner, but kids won't necessarily learn more. But I promise you, if your focus is squarely on teaching and learning, right, for those days, students will learn. My belief is that our business isn't as complicated as we make it sometimes. It becomes complicated because, sometimes we lack focus on those things that are really most critical. So to a young educator, a young person beginning as a principal, what I would say and what I do say is, find a classroom, find a seat in the back of it, and plant yourself. The other thing that I would say to someone, honestly, if they are, looking to become, really good at this business, is to spend some time at an elementary school. In elementary class.
Okay.
I was a high school teacher right? I was a high school teacher, but my first principalship was in an elementary school. And what I would tell you unequivocally and without question is that those 4 years made the most difference in for my career. Elementary teachers are incredible instructors, right?
Okay.
They understand instruction on a level that those of us who work at the secondary level really just don't quite get it. Don't quite get. And so, what I like to say is most of what I learned about instruction, I learned during those 4 years watching elementary teachers. I often would get in trouble because I could go into an elementary classroom and lose myself, sit in the back of a room and watch one of those teachers work and really just lose myself in awe and amazement at what they do.
Absolutely.
And so, I would strongly, and I have over my career, I've strongly recommended to folks who are interested in this work, becoming administrators, if you can spend some time in an elementary school, sitting at the feet of and watching veteran elementary teachers, that's one of the best things you can do. They will teach you more about teaching and learning than you can learn in any other place, in my humble opinion.
I like that because I'm a secondary guy. I did middle school work and high school, and you're spot on. The first few times that I spent in some of our elementary schools when I became assistant superintendent, I probably learned more about the value of instruction during those times.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that insight. Dr. King, let's talk a little bit about the future of education.
Yeah.
We are in what I call critical mass.
Mm-hmm.
We've got leaders that are being bounced out for foolishness. I said that, you didn't. We've got people who are advancing their political agendas, if you will, at times, regarding education. Talk to us about public schools, in your opinion, over the next maybe 10 years. What do you see as some critical points that we've got to get right in order to continue to do this work that we're doing?
Sure. Well, what is that old saying? Nothing succeeds like success, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
At the end of the day, what we have to be able to do as public educators, I think, much better than what we've done over the last probably 20 years, is tell our story, right?
Yeah.
And make sure folks understand the difference between our story and other folks who run schools.
Okay.
The thing that's critical to remember when folks start talking about, different educational settings, public versus private, is that, in public schools, we take everybody who walks through the door, right? We don't do any, kind of separating out and choosing. We don't get to take just those who are willing to follow the rules. We don't get to take just those who are well prepared, those who come with a level of support. We take them all, and we then do the work of trying to help every child. Now, every educational setting can't make that claim, and so we have to be really careful and really clear about that reality, and help folks understand that if you're going to compare us to other settings, you have to put that into context, right? So that's one of the first things is telling our story. The other thing about telling our story is making sure we don't allow people to give an impression about what happens in schools that is that's really outside of the reality of what goes on.
Mm-hmm.
You see a lot of these conversations really in the media about this idea of educators engaging with kids around issues of sex education or their own or students kind of issues around their sexuality or gender identity. You would think based on some of these conversations that educators are running out looking for these kind of conversations. What I tell people is, the most difficult thing I had to do every year in Virginia, in our district, we had um, a, 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 a curriculum that we had to deliver, around, student, kind of, reproductive health,
Right.
every year. And I'm going to tell you, the hardest thing I ever had to do every year was to identify a teacher who was willing to teach that unit, right? There are folks out there giving you the impression that there are educators out there chomping at the bit to have these kinds of conversations with children. I assure you that that is not the case. And I know that you know that. That's an incredible challenge to find people out there. But I think we have to make sure that people understand that, while there are certainly people who make bad decisions and do bad things, educators for the most part are people who want to focus on helping kids learn,
That's right.
academic content. We don't want to be engaged in those conversations with kids. We want those kinds of conversations to happen in kids' homes. And so we have to make sure that we don't let people give the impression that something's going on in our schools that isn't, because that's just not the case. And then just the last thing, obviously, I would say is, we have to be successful, with what we do. We have to make the most of our opportunities with kids. Kids have to learn, right, in our settings, and we have to be realistic about what's going on if that's not happening. It is not realistic to expect parents and community members to be okay with school failure. That's not a reasonable expectation.
Right.
And so we have to be realistic about the fact that today, more so than ever, and it's becoming more and more the case, people certainly have choices about where they're going to educate their children. And if we want them to continue to, as the kids would say, if we want them to continue to rock with us, we're going to have to make sure that we are providing a product that they see as valuable, and that adds, that edifies their lives. And so, that's really a critical piece of it. We can't expect people to be okay with school failure. That's just not going to happen.
And so critical are many points in there. We've got to continue to push the envelope to be better tomorrow than we are today. I mean, and I think that's so pointed. But we also have to make sure that we continue to market and tell our story. That's so critical, because we're getting eaten for lunch by some of these folks that are creating, and we're not mad at them, but they're creating these opportunities for learning, where they get to choose who comes, and most importantly, who does not come.
Absolutely.
Yet, we as traditional public school employees, we don't have that choice.
That's right.
And thank goodness for that. I'm
Right.
certainly not saying that I would love to be in an environment that gets to pick and choose. But people need to understand that it is our responsibility as traditional public school educators to educate everybody that comes through the door. And so we just need people to understand that requires a different level of work and so forth and so on.
Yes.
Dr. King, certainly thank you for the wonderful work that you're doing. I'm proud of you, brother, even though I didn't get to experience your walk into Alpha. I certainly heard about it. I'm going to stop messing with you about that. But certainly I'm proud of your career, both in the states of North Carolina and Virginia. You've done some amazing work and continue to do some amazing work. Is there anything else that you'd like to talk to us about? You want to, at your leisure, if you want to talk to us a little bit about some upcoming work that you may have going on, that's certainly your choice. We'll give you room for that at this point.
Well, I think I mentioned early on that I am in the midst of a transition.
Okay.
I will be in the next 2 weeks transitioning out of Johnston County, and going back to Durham.
Okay.
Brother William T. I'll be joining the team in Durham Public Schools.
Okay.
Where I'll be working, under the direction of Dr. Pascal Mabanga,
Right.
joining his team as the Deputy Superintendent for Durham Public Schools.
Okay.
I'm extremely excited about that opportunity, having had, my start as an educator in Durham, as a student teacher there, and then as a teacher there, and of course then as a principal, eventually in that school community. So I'm really excited to go back and be able to once again contribute to the vibrancy of the Bull City, which is one of my favorite places on the planet. And so I'm really excited about that work. Really excited to be able to learn from Dr. Mabanga. One of the things that I've certainly tried to do over my career, I've had a chance to work with any number of superintendents, and have always tried to identify, something that I can borrow from each one of them to kind of add to my own quiver, if you will. And so I've had the opportunity for the last, 2 years now to work under the direction of Dr. Eric Bracey here in Johnston, and I'm really excited to go over and learn from another of the most effective superintendents in the state of North Carolina, Dr. Mabanga, and really just excited to be a part of the work that they're doing in Durham. It's exciting work. That community, as I'm sure you know, if you've been there in a while, it's a really interesting place to see.
Absolutely.
Having known Durham when we were there in those days, and seeing the Durham that exists now, it's one of those things that every time I go, my wife and I go there for dinner a lot, and it always just amazes me.
A little bit different now.
Oh my goodness, to see kind of what it has morphed into. It's a really amazing transformation that's going on in that community, and so I'm really excited to join the team and be a part of helping that school system continue to deliver for students.
Well, there's an old saying, I'm not sure exactly where it's located, but it talks about your gift making room for you. So certainly excited to hear about their work. And once you get there and get settled, Dr. King, we're looking forward to having you back on the show to talk about that work that you're doing there. And again, certainly we're proud of you and the work that you're doing. If you hold on with me for a minute, we'll come back and close out the show.
Will do.
My guest next week on the Wright Experience will be Dr. David O. Shields. Dr. David O. Shields is a longtime superintendent in the district Lawrence 56 in the state of South Carolina. Dr. O. Shields is an outspoken advocate for improving the field of education. I'm absolutely excited to bring him to you. I've been knowing him for the last 11 years or so that I've served as a school superintendent. Dr. O. Shields is certainly someone that we are looking forward to having aboard the show, as he will talk to us about the many things that are going on currently in the state of education in South Carolina and throughout the United States. I'm absolutely excited and thrilled to be able to continue to bring this content to you. I hope that you all are enjoying the content that we bring to you as often as we can. We are looking and seeking right now guests to appear on this show. While we have focused for the most part on educational leadership, we are always looking to expand our portfolio to other professions, other disciplines. We even look to people who are certainly in leadership, but also who just would like to have this platform to be able to talk to my growing audience every day on this platform. So keep reaching out to us. Let us know who you'd like to see aboard this podcast, and we'll do our best to line them up to be a part of it. Thank you for your continued support of the Wright Experience as we continue to grow and get better every day. And Dr. King, I just want to say again to you, my brother, I am extremely proud of you and the work that you're doing. You have set the bar high for those of us that are looking to get better and become more prominent as educational leaders. The work that you're about to do and undertake is certainly commendable as you're moving from Johnston to Durham County in a few weeks. And we certainly look forward to hearing of your continued successes as you do that work. And anytime you need this platform, it's here and ready and available for you.
Appreciate that.
To the Wright Experience audience, thank you and good evening.